Well, Dean Zayas, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
So tell us, in this election cycle, as we're seeing it unfold, what kinds of issues are you seeing Latino households focused on?
Well, I should say that Latino homes worry about the same things that non-Latino homes worry about. Of course, there's concern with health care, and will I be insured? Will my company insure me? Will my job provide me and my family with the kind of coverage I need to safeguard everyone? We worry about our children's education. Is the school, or are the schools that my children are attending good enough? We worry about crime, of course, like any other community. And employment is another major one. Will I still have the job? Will I be able to know that a year from now I'll be employed, or if I'm not employed, that the opportunities are coming up? Those are some of the key issues that Latino families and households in the U.S. would be concerned about. The immigration discussion has pretty much overshadowed many of the more basic issues that Hispanic households worry about. There are those basics, education, health, employment, those sorts of things. It's not to say that immigration isn't important. It touches all of our hearts, but on a day-to-day basis, it's the other kind of primary issues that affect the Hispanic population.
The DREAM Act has come up in this election cycle and has kind of raised the issue of how the law deals with mixed status families in the education system. How is that playing out?
Well, the executive order that President Obama signed was certainly a victory for the Dreamers, as we call them, the DREAM Act, kids affected by the DREAM Act. But remember that they then go home, and what's waiting for them at home? It's an undocumented parents. They themselves are undocumented, but they've now got this deferment. And then they might have younger siblings who are US citizens. So mixed status families are very complex because you may have a 17-year-old DREAM actor who is undocumented, of course, but a 3-year-old sibling who is a US citizen. If parents are deported, what happens to that 3-year-old? We expect a 17-year-old or 16-year-old to take care of them, or do they return to the country with the deported parents? It really does create complexities. Now, with respect to education, that means that we have given the DREAM actors an opportunity. Their siblings are eligible for education because they're US citizens. So we have this imbalance in families. It's important to know that Hispanics across the spectrum see education as the great equalizer, the way to attain in this country, and I think that we've got to keep that in focus. And I think the better educated, whether it's our U.S. citizen children or our DREAM Act kids, the more that they can provide for our country. After all, we rely on an educated population to advance the economy. And I think that's very important that we keep our eyes on education.
That's very much a long-term consideration, and there's been a lot of discussion in this election cycle of the so-called demographic destiny of Latinos in the political system. How do you see those issues affecting Latinos' political profile in the long run? Well,
the politician who thinks only about these elections is kidding himself or herself, because the future of their own future as candidates and their party's futures are going to be affected by the long-term growth of the Hispanic population. We're looking at a growth to about 25% of the population being Hispanic, and these are voting Hispanics. And we see that there's been a decline in immigration, and in fact the population regeneration among Latinos is actually through US birth rates, the birth to US Hispanics. And so if we think of those young kids who today are being vilified, or whose parents are being vilified because they're undocumented, the children will recall that. Remember that when they're 18 and 21 and they are active voters. So I think our candidates need to think beyond today. Where will my party be? Where will I be in 10 or 15 years? And certainly the parties that will be around then must think about what they're doing today and what they're saying today and what impact that will have on them 15 to 20 years out, or even sooner.